Hi folks, today we're going to be talking about someone who frankly deserves very little attention, and yet here we are, because he keeps inserting himself into my orbit. This person produces one of the lowest forms of content on the internet, and I don't mean low level as an insult, I mean it descriptively. There is no substance, no original analysis, no intellectual rigor, just ad hominem attacks, exaggerated narratives, and outright fabrications packaged as some form of commentary. He's a smear merchant. That's his entire business model. His name is Adam McIntyre. He is a drama YouTuber in the purest sense of the term, along the same veins as tabloid television, lots of theatrics, zero depth, and no appeal to anyone with even a basic expectation of substance. His entire online existence consists of smearing people and attempting to build relevance by proximity. He has made dozens of videos about me over the years, many of them relying on outright lies, misrepresentations, or wildly over-dramatized reinterpretations of events. Despite that, I barely know this person. We've met maybe a couple of times over the span of several years. He has been to my establishment, one of hundreds of people who have passed through here, but I don't have any relationship with him whatsoever. Yet he appears oddly obsessed with me. For months, really actually for years, Adam has relied on the same tired narrative, saying that I flopped, that my channels are dead, that nobody watches my content. This is especially ironic given that I am demonstrably shadow banned on YouTube while performing well on other platforms. My content does well on Facebook and Instagram. I've had recent viral clips. I've been featured on multiple podcasts reacting to my reporting, one of those being the PBD podcast recently sharing an interview I conducted at a pro-Maduro protest here in Los Angeles, but that kind of nuance, or frankly any level of intellectual honesty, is lost on someone as shallow as Adam. And all that said, ultimately is beside the point. The reason we're here today is not to litigate YouTube analytics or personal attacks. I want to use Adam's latest video, once again where he claims that I flopped, as an opportunity to do something constructive. See, 7 months ago, Adam made a video declaring my supposed downfall. In my response, I deliberately reframed the conversation away from internet drama and towards something that actually matters. I raised a serious issue, one that is underreported, avoided, and aggressively insulated from scrutiny by the mainstream media and many creators on the internet. Specifically, I challenged the refusal within the gay community to confront the issue of protecting predators. That video has now been sitting there for 7 months. Adam never responded to it, not once. No acknowledgement, no rebuttal, no engagement, despite the fact that people in his orbit clearly saw it and reacted to it. Some even criticized me for raising the issue at all, which only confirms that it is exactly the kind of issue that needs to be addressed. So today, I'm renewing that challenge. Adam, I'm formally challenging you to debate me live on this topic. Now, in case Adam doesn't see this video, which is entirely possible, anyone watching this is welcome to forward this challenge to him. Let's have a real conversation. Let's put the theatrics aside and actually talk about an issue that has real-world consequences. Now, anybody who knows Adam knows that he will respond to almost anything on the internet, any rumor, any clip, any piece of gossip, but he's consistently refused to engage with this specific topic, and I think we all know why. Because engaging with it would require accountability. Because engaging with it would require confronting patterns within your own community. Because engaging with it would require substance. So the challenge stands. If you, Adam, choose once again to ignore this, if you choose silence over engaging with this conversation, you will only further prove the point I made 7 months ago. Now, all that being said, I'm going to link that original video that Adam ignored down below, and I am also going to expand in this video on my original argument. I'm going to introduce additional data, and I'm going to show that the problem is even more serious than I originally outlined 7 months ago. Now, before I go any further, I want to be extremely precise with what this data does and does not show, because precision is exactly what people like Adam avoid. What I'm going to make is an argument about documented patterns, reported victimization, and the systemic refusal to confront uncomfortable data when it conflicts with a cultural narrative that conveniently focuses on shielding protected identity groups for the sake of political gain. That said, here's the data. According to multiple peer-reviewed studies and large surveys, gay and bisexual men report significantly higher rates of childhood sexual abuse than heterosexual men. In the general male population, approximately 5 to 10% of men report experiencing childhood sexual abuse. By contrast, studies of gay and bisexual men consistently report much higher rates. According to a 2009 study of gay and bisexual men, approximately 20% reported a history of severe childhood sexual abuse, defined as contact abuse before the age of 18. Larger surveys and meta-analysis, including data referenced by the CDC's National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, show that childhood sexual abuse rates among gay and bisexual men are roughly 2 to 5 times higher than among heterosexual men. To put that into concrete terms, folks, heterosexual men report childhood sexual abuse at around 5 to 10%, while gay and bisexual men report rates commonly ranging between 20 to 40%, with some studies reaching as high as approximately 46% in specific clinical or community samples. And that raises a question that is almost never allowed to be asked. Who is abusing these boys? And why is this pattern treated as untouchable? According to research cited by Psychiatry Online, a study of 377 non-incarcerated pedophiles found that offenders classified as homosexual pedophiles, meaning they preferred male children, young boys, reported abusing an average of 150 children each, compared to an average of 20 victims among heterosexual pedophiles. That means that homosexual men, who are only 2 to 4% of the general population, victimize young children 7 times more often than heterosexual men. It's also fair to assume that within offender populations, homosexual men who target boys often have significantly higher victim counts. Now, additional reviews of offender data show that the proportion of pedophiles classified as homosexual ranges from 9% to 40%, depending on the sample. According to Psychiatry Online and the Zero Abuse Project, this represents 4 to 20 times the prevalence of adult male homosexuality in the general population, which is estimated at 2 to 4%. When you adjust that for a per capita comparison, it means that gay men who target boys are represented at rates far exceeding their share of the general population, which is precisely why this pattern is flagged in academic literature as a disproportionate overrepresentation. And further, according to the Archives of Sexual Behavior, a study of 229 convicted child molesters found that 86% self-identified as homosexual or bisexual based on their acts or preferences towards children. Again, 86% of convicted child molesters in that study identified as homosexual or bisexual. If you don't see the problem, folks, then I don't know what to tell you. So what does all of that actually tell us? It tells us that gay men who target boys are overrepresented relative to their population size. And it tells us that the refusal to discuss this data openly creates institutional blind spots that predators exploit. That said, 7 months ago, I raised this exact issue. 7 months ago, I invited Adam to have this discussion. There was no response, not because the data is weak, but because the implications are uncomfortable for Adam. He doesn't want to have this discussion because he's a coward, because it will inevitably expose that though he presents himself as a morally righteous person, when it comes to his own community, he holds a double standard. But you know what, folks? It's okay, because his silence says everything you need to know. So the challenge stands. If this data is wrong, let's debate it live. If the interpretation is flawed, I invite you to dismantle it. If the conclusions don't follow, let's confront it publicly. But outrage is not an argument, and silence is just confirmation of what we all know. Now, to conclude, why is there such an aggressive effort from people like Adam to prevent this conversation from happening at all? The answer isn't complicated, folks. Certain communities, activist organizations, and media figures have made identity protection more important than harm prevention. Any discussion that introduces uncomfortable data is immediately reframed as an attack, not on ideas or institutions, but on people, because that framing shuts down any sort of scrutiny. This creates an environment where accountability is treated as betrayal, questions are treated as violence, and silence is heavily rewarded, as we've all seen. And when that happens, well, predators like James Charles benefit. Not because anyone explicitly supports them, well, in James Charles's case, they actually do, but because systems that refuse self-examination inevitably create blind spots. But I think it goes without saying that the refusal to even acknowledge patterns like the ones we discussed doesn't make the problem go away. It just guarantees that it persists, unchecked, behind a wall of moral intimidation, because they want you too scared to even strike up the conversation. And thus that, not the data itself, is the real scandal. Anyway, folks, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. And the challenge still stands, Adam. Don't be a coward. Talk to you later. Peace.